Two trailers that have got me super excited are the trailer for Frozen 2, which, despite not really telling us anything about the plot, looks pretty fantastic, and Godzilla King of Monsters, which looks like it's gonna have a lot more kaiju screen time than the previous movie, so I am super excited for it, because in case it's not obvious from this channel, I'm a big fan of monsters. So something that I thought would be fun to do to combine my interest in these two trailers is take Disney princesses and turn them into big scary kaijus. I'm Christian Pearson of Popcross Studios, and let's get right into it. Now, one of the complicated parts of trying to turn Disney princesses into kaijus over something like my turning Pokemon into superheroes video is Pokemon tend to have much more different looks from each other, whereas a lot of the Disney princesses are kind of just thin, tall, attractive women with generally similar face shapes. Like, they often have different-ish hair, but even that doesn't tend to vary that much. So a lot of it comes down to just their color schemes. So that's one of the things I rely on most for making the kaijus look like them. But I tried to pick characters to make these drawings off of from Disney princesses that have something kind of interesting about them. For instance, this first one, Elsa's got ice powers, so I leaned into the ice, added a lot of icy bits to the design of the characters. I just put icy spikes all over her, and then I color her very blue and purple and more blue and a bit of white to try and keep it looking with the icy design, as if this creature burst out of the depths of the Arctic or something like that and started running amok. I also wanted to keep Elsa's braid on this character, but I didn't want to give the kaiju actual hair, so I ended up making a sort of icy braid, and I don't really know how it would work. I kind of pictured it as if it could move and sway around, but as it looks here, it kind of looks like it would just be static because it's all just a bunch of chunks of ice put together. And I don't know if that really works, but I still think it's a cool element. Also, as I've said in the past, I've started really liking drawing ice. I think it started back when I did my Christmas episode where I drew Mrs. Claus fighting some ice demon things, and I just started really liking how I have to ink ice a little bit differently. Most stuff I just ink in black, but ice I ink in a darker blue color, and then rendering it is just really fun because ice has a bit of a see-through glow kind of look to it, and I think it's just really cool. So I had a lot of fun with this first creature. I think the shape is fun. I gave it a nice big thick tail because that feels like a kaiju thing to do. And besides that, like I said, just icy spikes everywhere. I ended up going kind of crocodile in terms of the skin texture, which I'd originally thought something like a polar bear. I don't know when I just decided to go crocodile looking with this one, but maybe it was because of how I did the face right off the bat. It has kind of a longer snout. But either way, I ended up really liking how this one came together. So we're coming on to the end of this one, so let's take a look at the final version of the Elsa Kaiju. Now this one, surprisingly being based off of possibly the cutest character, ends up being by far the creepiest. Just, like, you'll see once I get more into it, but this is a really creepy looking monster. I was thinking going into it kind of like a Gorgon, you know, like Medusa, how something that has like snake hair, but instead of doing actual snakes, I just have the hair being like flowing out in chunks as if it's something that this kaiju can use like tentacles to grab onto people and whip them around. Or not people, I guess, like to grab buildings and tear them down or fight Jaegers or something. This one I did end up taking some design cues from Pacific Rim specifically. There's a kaiju in that, the one that they fight at the very end of the first movie that has this kind of weird spread out eyes, almost like a hammerhead shark. And that's where I took inspiration for this kaiju's face. And I think it's pretty cool slash creepy looking, especially when I get into coloring. This one just becomes a really bizarre monster that I feel like in movement could easily give people nightmares. Something that I think I did better with this character is made the head smaller. Generally when you're making some kind of big monster, to make it feel bigger, you tend to want to make the head smaller in proportion to the rest of the body. Like if you look at Godzilla, Godzilla's head is way smaller compared to its body than, say, a T-Rex, which is still big, but way smaller than Godzilla. And it's not always the case, but that is a way to kind of make things look bigger, is give them a smaller head. Of course, one of the problems with this one is I made the eyes kind of big, which counteracts that a little bit, because bigger eyes implies that the creature's a bit smaller. I mean, I'm generalizing. This is just something that I've noticed in terms of looking at creatures when they're bigger versus smaller. With this one, I kind of went a little bit ham with the textures on the shoulders and the scalp. I gave this really, really bumpy, almost rocky texture. And then on the forearms, I put kind of like little jutting triangle spike things. And then on the stomach, I wanted to make it look a little bit almost wrinkly, and that didn't quite come across, but I do end up liking the texture that's on the stomach. I think it's the most successful of the ones across this character's body. And I also really like how I end up doing the coloring on the hair on this one. Something I've really noticed lately is that I love a color gradient going from yellow to orange. I think it's just really nice looking, especially when you're doing a character's hair. Also on the tail, you can see I gave it kind of that chameleon sort of swirl, and I took that from Rapunzel's little pet chameleon character, Pascal. But overall, I think this one definitely turned out really cool and super, super creepy. So let's see what she looks like when I finished up the Rapunzel Kaiju. Now I chose Ariel for the next one because she was a character that I thought I could have some fun with in terms of making a more aquatic kaiju. I give this creature kind of a swimming-ish pose as if it's underwater doing something, but I also wanted to keep in mind I had to make it so that it looked like it could function on land, because a kaiju is much more interesting if it can come up onto a city and start destroying a city and fighting some giant robot in a city and stuff like that. This one, I think, ends up looking the smallest of all the kaijus, and I don't totally know why that is. I still made the head small. I think it's because I end up making the arms really, really big. I give the creature big arms and these kind of giant lobster-ish claws that I don't totally render out looking that much like a lobster. They're just like kind of weird claws on the ends of arms that don't have fists. But I still think it ends up looking pretty cool, just not as kaiju-like as the others. I also tried to make this one a little bit less textured. I pictured this one being more smooth, like a shark would be, and I give her kind of a shark head. And for the red hair, instead of actually going with hair, I give this creature sort of like a bunch of red coral going down its back, and I think that ends up being a nice way to make it look a little bit more like Ariel. I probably could have added a bit more coral along the back or somewhere else, because I think the red is a nice contrast to the rest of the light blue and purple of this creature, but I do end up adding a little bit of a light red in the sort of stripes that I put along the character's stomach and biceps. I also give her like a kind of random little like crab arm sticking out under her big arm, and there's one on the other side that I just don't end up rendering out because I figure it would just be hiding on the other side of the character's body. On this one, I also, because it was lacking in texture in comparison to some of the other ones, I do a thing that I've done in a lot of creatures in the past where I go block off a chunk of the character's body and then just do a really light stroke with my salty watercolor brush with a very low opacity, so it just adds a little bit of an extra pattern onto the character that I think helps make it a little bit more interesting and not so bland, which it could have come across kind of boring looking because it's so much less detailed than some of the other ones. But overall, I think this one ends up looking pretty cool, especially the light blue. I think it's a really nice color. So here we are with the Ariel Shark Kaiju. Now, this next one technically isn't a Disney princess, but I felt like I had to put her on the list. She's one of my favorite Disney characters. She's got one of the most interesting designs of any Disney female character, and she's from one of my favorite movies from my childhood. So let's get right into drawing
Yzma, living proof that dinosaurs once roamed the earth.
I mean, I had to, right? What guy didn't have a crush on Yzma when they were a kid, right, fellas? No! Yeah, okay, maybe not. But let's get into it anyway.
Pull the lever, Kronk. Wrong lever!
Yes, Yzma. There was no way I was leaving this one out. This was actually the second character I thought of to draw, but had to save her till the end because, really a Disney princess, but I still knew I had to do this one, and there was so much more to go off of for this character because Yzma's design is so much more interesting than a lot of the other Disney princesses. No offense to them, she's just so much more interesting looking in comparison to a lot of the other Disney female characters. She's so old and creepy and wrinkly, and she's got this just crazy outfit with a weird feather sticking off her head and feathers sticking out her sides. And she's got another outfit in the movie that's just got like this big red frill behind her neck. And she's just crazy looking. And The Emperor's New Groove is one of the most memorable movies from my childhood. I just love that movie so much. I even considered doing a Kuzco llama kaiju, but ended up saying, no, let's just stick with Yzma, because she's a pretty fun looking character. And this one, I ended up starting with something a little more Godzilla looking, but thought, you know what, that doesn't really work, because Yzma's, part of her whole design is she's very thin and gangly and kind of bony. So after a crack at doing a Godzilla type one, I looked at her again and was like, you know what, those frills on her kind of look a little bit like wings, and like, you know, a bit creepy moth-ish wings, and then the name just snapped right into my head, Yzma. I was thinking kind of like Mothra, and I ended up doing a bit of like Mothra mixed with Rodan mixed with Yzma, and I really like how it ends up looking. It's the most busy looking of all the ones I do, but I think that kind of works because Yzma is a bit more complicated looking than a lot of these other characters. I also like her color scheme because I'm just partial to any range of purple because I often do a yellow rim lighting, and purple and yellow look really nice together, and so I just do a whole range of bluey purple to reddy purple, and I think that ends up looking pretty cool. And when I think of moths, they've got a bit of a fluffiness to them, so I end up giving her kind of a ring of fluff around her neck, almost like a mane. And for the face, I took some inspiration from Muto from the Godzilla 2014 movie. The wings, as I said, I just make them look like the frills coming off of Yzma's neck. And then I gave the creature kind of like weird gangly legs. I looked at some pictures of Mothra for that. And then for the tail, I wasn't really sure where to go, so I ended up just giving it kind of a generic dragon-like tail, and I think that ended up okay. It's not the most interesting element of the character, but it turned out fine. But overall, I think this one ends up doing a good job representing the character that I'm taking inspiration from. It's creepy looking and kind of gangly and a bit bizarre, and those are all things that I think describe Yzma pretty well, so I was quite happy with how this one turned out. So coming down to the end, and here we are with the Yzma. Almost as horrifying as Yzma herself. Alright everybody, thanks so much for watching Popcross Studios. If you ever want to see your own artwork drawn on this channel, I do a community episode once a month. The next one's all about sci-fi characters, so if you've got a cool sci-fi character, send it over to the Popcross community Discord or to popcrossanimations@gmail.com. But I highly recommend joining the Discord. There's a great group of people in there sharing artwork and giving each other advice. It's very positive, super great environment. I encourage it for any artist out there. Thanks so much for stopping by everybody. I will see you later. Yeah. Goodbye.